Okay, so I'm Beth from Watershed Ecology Center. Thank y'all for coming. You did that? Okay, not me. I was like, I touched it and the lights went off. I was like, oh, I'll put it back. So thank y'all for coming. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about watersheds. My boss, Dr. Jack Turner, was supposed to be here this evening, but he is babysitting his grandkids in Pennsylvania, and so he sent me in his place. So I hope that's okay with you. The program is Water Runs Downhill, so we're going to be talking about watersheds, but we've kind of based it specifically around the Pacolet. So let's see if I can make this go the right direction. There we go. A little bit about the Watershed Ecology Center. First of all, we're based in the University of South Carolina Upstate campus. We are in the bottom floor of the science building, if any of y'all have been over there. This is the very first year that I am actually a University of South Carolina employee. The rest of the time, our program has been privately funded. And so some of these people you see up here, oh, I don't have it on, it's at the end, sorry. So we get most of our money from grants through like SCDHEC, the Duke Energy grants, that kind of stuff. We get money from Spartanburg Water, who views us and uses us as part of their educational component that they have to do anyway. We also work with SJWD, the Woodruff Roebuck, the Chesney Liberty Fingerville, and most recently Greer Public Works has joined in with us. So we work with a lot of the water districts to get the word out about conserving water and how important water is as a resource. And then we also had private funders. So this is the first time that USC Upstate has contributed to our organization other than giving us a home. So that's really nice to be a kind of a little bit more part of that. So what we do mostly, I'll use this little pointer thing, check this out. Look at that, I can do it. We do mostly school programs. I know we go into schools in Landrum because this is Athena, and Athena Campbell lives in Landrum, and she has come up here and done a whole bunch of programs in this area. But we go into the schools and we teach kids programs about water that go right along with the state standards that the teachers have to teach anyway. But all of our programs are hands-on and they're free because of getting our money through grants and the water districts and stuff like that. We also do summer camps. These are some of our little summer camp kids up here. They're gathered around a Choose Tap water cooler, and they all received water bottles from Spartanburg Water as part of their Choose Tap program. We put on an annual event called Discover Your Watershed that's through the SJWD Water District, so more down on the Tiger River area, but we help them out with that. It's a free public event. They give out the canoe kayak passes for Lakes Lyman and Cooley if that's something you're interested in, and give out lunch until we run out. So usually we get everybody. I don't know that we've ever had anybody leave hungry. We are doing a rain barrel program, and I'd like to talk with you if you're interested in having us do a rain barrel program here. We are partnered with Coca-Cola Bottling Company, Spartanburg County Stormwater. They provide, the bottling company obviously provides the big old tubs that the syrup comes in, and for some reason these cannot be recycled because of how they're made or whatever place they are in being recycled, and so they've got to find other ways to use these. So they have donated them to programs to have rain barrels made out of them. And Spartanburg County Stormwater provides the installation kit. These kits are really cool. They're not just the cut the hole in the top and let the water flow in. They work to keep mosquito larvae out a lot better than the other systems. Everything that you need to put the rain barrel together is in the kit except for drill. Even the drill bits and stuff are in there. So it's excellent, and these are free because of the way that we're working together, the partnership. We provide the education, they provide the equipment. So we'd love to do one with y'all if you're interested. Great. And the last thing we do is Adopt a Stream, which is something that I want to talk about in reference to the Pacolet and the watersheds and all that stuff. We started off doing Adopt a Stream through Georgia Adopt a Stream because South Carolina did not have one. Brand new this year, SCDHEC has taken on Adopt a Stream. So this is our brand new South Carolina Adopt a Stream logo. We're still working out the kinks and all that stuff, but it's a great program where we train people to go out and monitor the quality of the water in a stream near them. You may say, why is that important? We're going to cover that in this program today. So the Pacolet River. It's a great place to be. There's a lot going on the Pacolet River. Dr. Turner, who's not here, has done a lot of water surveys on the Pacolet River. We know a lot about the Pacolet River, but there's a lot that we also don't know about the Pacolet River. So first, let's start off with watersheds. South Carolina is comprised of a number of different watersheds. The one that we are in right here, am I doing it right? How do I get you to come up? There we go. Is the Broad, and the Pacolet River is in the top of that, and we are at the top of our watershed, which is pretty good for us. There's some up in North Carolina, but most of it's here in South Carolina. I'm going to run through this little watershed model with you real quick. We do this with kids in the school as a hands-on program, but I'm just going to kind of run through it, and I think you'll pick on it very quickly. So this is my little demonstrational watershed. A watershed is an area where all the rain or water that falls on it will drain to a common point. So anywhere I rain on here, it's going to end up in this little pond or lake that's down at the bottom. So anything that goes on here will eventually drain to there. When we do this with school kids, we have them come up and we talk about this being our community, and we live here. We've got a little factory over here on the side. That's where we work. We've got our little community here, and people like our community so much that there's new construction going on. They're building a new house. We've got a golf course, and we've got this farmer over here. We've got this lovely lake. And so basically what we do is we go to work at our little paint factory. We buy our produce from our farmer guy, and we do recreational type stuff on our lake. But we spread the word, and people started coming into our community to enjoy our lake, to enjoy our farmers market. And so we said, hey, we'll make a little bit of money. So we clear cut this forest area right here where you can kind of sort of see the soil, if I'm not dumping everything off. And we use the money from that to put in a golf course. So we've got a little golf course here. So people are coming into our community and they're enjoying their time there. So we're hanging out, we're at somebody's house, we're having a barbecue, enjoying our great community. And I look down and I see a dandelion in my yard. I'm so embarrassed, I can't believe there's a dandelion in my yard. So I'm kind of standing on it, hoping nobody will see the dandelion in my yard. Once everybody leaves from the barbecue, I go out to Walmart, and what do I buy? I buy some Roundup or some kind of herbicide that's going to kill that dandelion on my yard. So the kids come up, and we have them put Kool-Aid, which is really sticky, makes a great mess, but it's a lot of fun. So you're just going to have to imagine it here. So they come up, and they put on some herbicide, which is like a purple Kool-Aid, and they shake it on my yard. Now, if I don't have any dandelions in my yard, do you want dandelions in your yard? So we put it on everybody's yard. How about our golf course? Are they going to want dandelions there? Probably not. Do we want all kinds of nasty weeds around our lake? Probably not. How about our farmer? Does he want the... So, as you can imagine, our thing is now covered with purple Kool-Aid. So then we have another cookout where it's somebody else's house and I get bit by a mosquito. I don't like mosquitoes. I'm all mad there's mosquitoes here. So I talked to them about this. I said, I'm not coming back if you have mosquitoes. So the next day they go out to Walmart, and what do they buy? Some kind of an herbicide. So the kids come up, they put herbicides all over everywhere. And then there's some other things that we don't always think about as being a pollutant of types. Like, how about soil, loose soil that can wash into our streams? So we have Kool-Aid mix. Actually, I think this is hot chocolate mix. So we have hot chocolate mix. You put that on there. And we've got herbicides and pesticides and all those sides that we're sticking on here. Then we stick on the fertilizers, and it's a big muddy mess. And then if we put chemicals in here, in theory, is it dripping? Okay, it comes out my little factory and will drip down in the stream. And so we do all this, and then we make it rain. So it rains on our little community. And all of this Kool-Aid and hot chocolate and everything else runs down into our little stream that then goes down into our lake where we're all hanging out for fishing and in our paddle boards and stuff like that. And this is a big muddy mess, okay? It's just yucky. It doesn't even smell good anymore. It's just bad. So we drain our lake, and in theory, I've got a container under there. In theory. And so we pull this out, and it's just totally yucky. And you say, so who wants to drink this? And if y'all have met ever sixth graders ever, there's always one boy that's like, I'll drink that. So, and he would too. You just ask the teachers, and they're like, oh yeah, he'd drink it. So it's this big muddy mess. And so we start pulling stuff out of here. And we say, all right, so I've got this little amphibian. Is this good for my little amphibian? Probably not. So then we talk about indicator species and how amphibians can tell us a little bit about the health of our environment, and that this is not good for them. It'll go directly into their skin. My golf ball is not in here, but anyway, pull out this little insect guy. A lot of the insects that we have that are beneficial insects start off their life as larval or nymph forms in water. Damselflies, dragonflies, caddisflies, all those guys start off their life in water. And these pesticides that we put on our yard are also going to work as pesticides in the water. So these helpful, beneficial guys aren't going to be able to survive through that. How about our little fishy here? Is he going to like that water? He's not going to like that. So if there's no fish and our pond's not doing well, are people going to come here and spend their money to hang out there? Probably not. So we've got a problem there too. And then the kids' favorite one. We got a piece of rubber doggy poo. And I forgot to introduce our dog. This is one of the best parts about this model is the animals are absolutely ginormous. So when we talk about the animals, the kids put feces on the thing, and that's always fun. But they always put giant piles behind the dog and the cow because they're bigger than the houses. And so we all share one dog because he's so big, but he has a lot of this that comes out. And so talk about cleaning up after ourselves. And you think, well, it's just one dog. What difference does it make? But if we all do that, we end up with a lot of this in our water, and that's never good. And then we've got a plant in here. Same thing that fertilizers do to plants on the land, they also do to plants in the water. So we got fertilizers in the water, the plants grow real fast. After the plants grow real fast, they use up all the resources in the water, and as they die and decay, the bacteria doing that sucks up all the oxygen in the water and creates dead zones. This is a big deal out in the Gulf right now. They were showing something on the news the other day where they were swimming through and it was all green and alive, and then they just went through this black wall. There's nothing alive there. There's no oxygen in the water. Nothing can survive, and it comes from over-fertilization. And so our plants do the same thing. So at this point, I take out a little spoon and I say, okay, so where did this come from? And they're like, well, I don't know. And I'm going, well, what is it? Well, it's fertilizers, it's pesticides, it's feces, it's trash. Okay, well, where did it come from? Is it yours? And they're going, oh, it's not mine. But if we all live in this community, it kind of came from all of our yards. But can I pull some out and say, here, this was your fertilizer? I can't. So we call that non-point source pollution. I can't point to any one source and say this came from you. This is the bulk of our water pollution on the Pacolet and pretty much everywhere else in South Carolina, is this non-point source pollution that comes from everybody. We'd love to be able to point to factories and poultry places and stuff like that and say, well, they're dumping all these things in. The truth of the matter is, yeah, maybe some of them are, but they're so highly regulated that most of this stuff isn't happening anymore. And if it is, they tend to get caught and get into pretty big trouble. So yeah, it does still happen. Sometimes it's accidental, sometimes it's on purpose, but the bulk of our pollution comes from all of us. We're all part of this. If we put fertilizers on our yards and they don't soak all in and get used up by the yard and they wash off, we're all part of this. So we talk about ways we can keep this from happening, things we can do. We can keep our cars tuned up so they're not leaking oil. We can clean up after our pets. We can use natural fertilizers and make sure that we put them on before it's, not when it's going to rain and all that kind of stuff. So we go through that with all the kids, and they see that, okay, I'm a part of this watershed. I'm a part of what's going on here, and I can make a difference. Even if it's just a little bit, I can make a difference. I know this works because I'll be walking around in Ingalls, and somebody will come up to me and see the Watershed Ecology Center shirt, and they're going, you're the reason. It's your fault that we have to recycle now. And I'm going, sorry, but thanks. Or whatever it is that their kids came home with. So we found if we can reach the kids go home and teach the adults, and that's usually what makes the change. But our little tiny scale watershed here is the same as our big watershed here with the Broad River, and how everything eventually flows from the mountains down into the sea. So the watershed itself, this is the Broad watershed. Looking online, it was extremely hard to find a little map of just the Pacolet River. I'm not sure why that is, but it was the case. But watersheds don't follow boundaries. So part of the broad watershed is in North Carolina, this little part up here where we start, and comes down through Spartanburg County and goes down out into Cherokee and Union, and just kind of keeps on heading downhill until it gets to the sea. Clicker button. This is a little bit better picture where you can actually, was that? Somebody say something. Where you can actually see the Pacolet, but it doesn't show the North Carolina part. So we've got the Pacolet River. This is the north and the south where they flow down all the way to the ocean. So that's the path that we're looking at right there. And this kind of is the boundaries of Spartanburg County, a kind of Enoree and a little bit up in there. So if you're in Spartanburg County, you're in the broad watershed, and a lot of it is the Pacolet, the Tiger, and the Enoree rivers. There we go. So I'm going to see if I can pull this up real quick. This is an EPA tool that we use quite a bit with the Adopt-A-Stream program. It shows us what streams have been assessed and what streams have not been assessed, and it's right down here, minimized, I think. Yay! And this gives us a clear idea. We started doing Adopt-A-Stream. We were working with the Spartanburg Community Indicators Project. Have any of y'all heard of that thing? Basically what they're doing is looking at different indicators in Spartanburg County to determine if it's a great place to live or not, and how these things can be improved. The natural environment is one of the indicators. We give a report every 3 years, and one of the things that they wanted to know was the quality of the water in Spartanburg County. Well, the water we get from Spartanburg Water for us to drink is excellent. They go above and beyond the regulations, all that kind of stuff. If y'all notice that yucky taste that we had before isn't there this summer, but the other districts are battling with that. Spartanburg Water put in an aeration system that artificially turns the lake to try to keep that from happening. So they do a great job. But our source waters is one of the things that they were interested in. And they made a, it's going to find us here, hopefully. It'll probably put us in Inman. But anyway, oh, there we go. Okay, show map. So the people that actually do the reporting went on to the EPA website, which is kind of hard to navigate if you've ever tried to look through the EPA website, and find streams that were called impaired. And they looked on this site, and it said, according to what they found out, that there were only 7 impaired streams in all of Spartanburg County, which is fabulous if you don't know what's going on with those streams. The real story is there are only 7 streams that were actually being monitored, and all 7 of them were impaired. And so this map here gives us a better idea of what's going on where. Anything that's red is impaired. Anything that's blue is not assessed. And anything that's green is supposed to be okay. However, the last assessment was done in 2012, and so these numbers are a little bit old, but it's better than nothing. So I'm going to see if I can scroll through. I'll try not to be right in front of your faces here. Spartanburg County, just quickly follow this Pacolet kind of down. And you can see that there's a lot of blue compared to how much red and green is on this map. So there's a lot of this that has not been assessed. And the ones that have, unfortunately, a lot of them are red. So there's a lot of these little side streams that flow into our major streams that have not been monitored. Nobody knows what's going on with these guys. And that's part of why we started doing Adopt-A-Stream, was so that we would be able to gather a little bit of information to get baseline information about those little streams. So this is something that anybody can go to. It's they call it my watershed tool, How's My Watershed. If you go to EPA and type in How's My Watershed, that may come up, but you can click on anywhere and it shows you the streams that EPA has been monitoring. So it's kind of interesting when we're trying to place people for Adopt-A-Stream. All right, I lost my clicker. But I use that a lot through this program to gather some information. So we're looking at the Pacolet River. We all know it starts in the mountain and goes downhill. We're at the top of the watershed, which generally means our water is a lot better than the people at the bottom of the watershed. And so I've got a little bit of information about that. First of all, the North Pacolet is at the very top of this watershed, starts in the mountains itself, has a lot of dissolved oxygen in the water, and that is an important factor. Anything that lives in the water needs dissolved oxygen. The higher the dissolved oxygen, usually the colder the waters, and the better quality of life you've got in that stream. So when we do adopt a stream, one of the things that we look at are the macroinvertebrates that live there, those little insect larvae. And there are some that we just don't find down towards Spartanburg, but that we can find in the North Pacolet because they're the colder, faster moving streams, higher dissolved oxygen. And one of those is water pennies. They look like little horseshoe crabs, except they're just little tiny insect guys, and they're really neat. But we found them up in the North Pacolet. Won't even see anything like that down towards Spartanburg. But a lot of recreational areas in the North Pacolet. There's higher dissolved oxygens. They're comparable to some that are designated as trout streams. And it flows into the Pacolet just after those lakes Blaylock and Bowen. The last time it was assessed was in 2012, which is the most recent assessment, and it was found to have impairments of mercury, which from what I understand was from some of the plants that were in the area that were on the Pacolet, but I couldn't find a whole lot of information about it. And it was kind of one of those things that nobody really wanted to talk about, but the impairment is there. Mercury is a problem because it builds up in fish, and so if people are eating these fish, they can be consuming higher levels of mercury than they would know, because if you've got a medium-sized fish and he ate 3 little tiny fish and all 3 little tiny fish had mercury, all of that goes into the big fish, and then he passes all of that on to the bigger fish, and by the time they're the size that we want to eat them, they can have very high concentrations of mercury, which doesn't ever leave your system and can mess with all kinds of systems in your body that keep you going in a normal direction. So this was only found in the North Pacolet. After that, it seems to go away, and it's usually in the substrate, which means as long as you're not in there mucking it up or they're not dredging streams, usually it just kind of stays there, but they do have a fish advisory for how many of those fish you should be eating. Impairment for degraded aquatic life. This is usually sedimentation. You've got stuff coming in and making their lives not good. Sometimes it's lower levels of dissolved oxygen, but here in the North Pacolet, there's been a lot of construction lately. It's a great place to live. People want to live by the river. So with that added construction, it adds some sedimentation, and that's part of the degraded aquatic life that's here. And then the other impairment is bacteria and other microbes. This is the E. coli and stuff like that, and there aren't huge levels, but every once in a while they'll get a spike, which they have to count. And the E. coli happens in the environment, it's in the substrate, so after a storm you'll get higher levels. If you're mucking around in there, you get higher levels. So it's just something to be aware of if you are swimming or hanging out in these streams. There are bacteria and microbes in there, and not to drink it. A lot of people think, oh, it's a fresh stream, it's so beautiful, I can drink it, and then they get very sick. So don't drink it. Put it through a life straw or something like that if you're gonna drink it. The South Pacolet is also at the top of the watershed, or in the Landrum, and it goes through the Chestnut Ridge Preserve. It's got more like fishing pools and stuff like that than the North Pacolet, from what I could find out. But recreation is huge in the Pacolet all the way down. The last time it was assessed was in 2012. I'm just sneaking over here to grab my water. And this one did not have the mercury issues, but it had the degraded aquatic life and the bacteria, which we find in most of our streams. Although not necessarily very high levels, but they are there in levels that can be of concern. From there, the Pacolet flows into Lakes Bowen and Blaylock. These were constructed lakes. They were made by Spartanburg Water to be able to keep up with the water needs of the growing Spartanburg County area. So they dredged these out. They made big lakes. They've got regulations on what recreation can be both of them, or how close you can build to the water and what you can do in that riparian zone, which is the area right on the edge, whether you can plant or not plant, whether you can cut things down or not. All these are trying to keep the lake as clean as possible, but you are able to be on them and use them and even live on them. But our water is taken directly from those lakes and then cleaned by Spartanburg water and then pumped back out to your house unless you have a well. So some of these areas are not assessed. Remember we looked at that map and there's a lot of blue? So there's quite a bit of these lakes that has not ever been assessed. But the ones that were, most of the lakes are unpolluted. So you say, okay, they're fed by the South Pacolet. The Pacolet's impaired. How can they be unpolluted? A lot of this is due to just having more water than bad guys. So it dilutes the amount of bacteria, it dilutes the amount of sedimentation, it sinks to the bottom. And so we don't have the same issues in the big lake as we do just on the stream. Excuse me. Then, as you continue on down, some of the more popular areas of the Pacolet are the Clifton Mills area, Glendale Shoals, and Lawson's Fork, which feeds into the Pacolet. These are all areas that people know on the Pacolet. They go there for recreation. They enjoy hanging out on the Pacolet. It's a great place to be. And these places are where people can sometimes come in contact with more of these microbes. I know on Glendale Shoals, they've actually got signs up saying don't wade in these waters because of the high levels of bacteria, but there's people playing in there all the time anyway. And other areas have degraded aquatic life. Once again, a lot of this is from erosion. Then it flows into the Broad River, which is the namesake of the watershed that we live in. And this travels pretty far down, but it's just the Pacolet. It joins into the Broad after it leaves Spartanburg County. So we'll just kind of hit on these pretty quick as we get on down to the sea. This is largely assessed in the northern region, with the bacteria being kind of constant wherever it has been assessed. And as we go downstream, we're going to be picking up more and more of these contaminants. With all the flooding in Columbia last year, it was just last year, right? They had huge problems with the water there. It was picking up contaminants from all over the place and bringing it all down there. And so whenever we have tons of water up here, those tons of water just multiplies with all those tributaries as it heads down, as it gets closer to the sea. So the further down you get in the watershed, typically the more impairments you find. Around here, a lot of our impairments come from fecal contamination, usually from horses and cows up here. Sometimes it's from dogs, sometimes it's from wildlife. They actually have DNA tests where you can test and find out where your contamination is coming from, which is useful to know because if it's from people, you probably have a broken something that can be fixed. If it's coming from horses or cattle, they're in the water somewhere, we can fence them out, that can be fixed. The problem is these tests at this point don't show the percentage. So you don't know if it's 99% raccoon and 2% person. So that's a problem with these tests, but it does give an indication where they come from. This testing is expensive, but both Spartanburg Water and SJWD do invest in this testing from time to time to find out how they can improve their watersheds. Tim Sherbert, who works with Spartanburg County Stormwater, does 319 grants. These are grants that are devised to help homeowners and business owners keep the water around them cleaner. So it helps provide fencing for farmers to keep cattle from directly tromping through streams and stuff like that. And he's worked with a lot of homeowners on improving the quality of the water around Spartanburg County. So from there, it becomes the Congaree River and it goes into Lakes Marion and Moultrie. These are impaired with acidity, ammonia, and degraded aquatic life. We haven't hit the acidity and ammonia before. So acidity typically comes from excess fertilizers. Ammonia typically comes from excess fertilizers. At this point, they've come through Columbia and all of that non-point source pollution from everybody upstream and Columbia is all joining in these lakes. And so they do have a little bit higher levels of ickies down there. But the bacteria and microbes doesn't seem to come into play as much. So I'm not quite sure how that happened. I would think they'd be there, but it doesn't show them. So then Santee and Cooper rivers, and finally into the Charleston Harbor. And believe it or not, this is not assessed. You get down to the Charleston Harbor, everything's blue, nothing has been assessed. We had no idea what we're dumping into the ocean. It's probably not fantastic, but it could be diluted enough from everything else joining in that it's not as big of a problem. But these are all problems because of it being the non-point source pollution that we can kind of fix. We can work together to maybe not eliminate, but to decrease some of the stuff that's going into the water. I think that's my... Yeah, here's my thank you slide. And so we can work together to try to fix some of these problems. And one of the ways that we can do that is by finding the baseline of what these streams are. When we looked at that other map, a lot of those non-assessed streams, we've got no idea if there's huge problems on those streams or no problems on those streams. And so when we were tasked with finding out the water quality in Spartanburg County, we kind of threw up our hands and said, we don't know. The only way we can tell from is by these 7 streams that DHEC is monitoring, and they only monitor them every other month from May to October. And so it really doesn't give us a huge picture of the water quality in Spartanburg County. So we looked around trying to figure out what we could do about this. We found Georgia Adopt a Stream, and this is my Georgia Adopt a Stream shirt from Confluence this year. They have a big conference thing. And they will train anybody. They adopted South Carolina. There were some of us from Upstate Forever, Anderson University, there's Anderson College, whatever it is down there, Anderson. And by now we're moving over into Columbia. We're working with Columbia Stormwater. And we've been going and we were being trained by Georgia Adopt a Stream. We were volunteer monitors. We got certified. It's a quality assurance, quality control program. It has a co-op that's been approved by the EPA. And so all of this information that the volunteers collect in Georgia goes directly to their EPD, which is like the equivalent of our DHEC. And so if there's any issues, their EPD knows right away. And we said, wow, this is a great idea. I wonder why South Carolina doesn't do this. So Erica Hollis from Upstate Forever kind of knocked on DHEC's door for about 3 months, and they finally let her in. And she said, why aren't we doing this? And they kind of looked around and went, I don't know. And so all of a sudden they said, we're going to have a South Carolina Adopt a Stream program. So starting in April, they've kind of rolled out the South Carolina Adopt a Stream program. It basically follows the Georgia protocols. The citizens are trained with this quality assurance, quality control program. They're certified. In Spartanburg County at the Watershed Ecology Center, we received a grant from Duke to purchase 25 monitoring kits. The equipment in these kits racks up to about $1,000 a piece. So we figured it's kind of hard to say, hi, thank you for being a volunteer. We're going to certify you. Now go buy a $1,000 kit, because nobody's got the money for that. And so we got the grant to be able to give out these 25 kits. We do have a couple left. But people were going out and monitoring these streams. We were gaining that baseline information that we need to go, okay, this stream is normally bad. We need to find out what's going on here. This stream is normally good, and then this happened. What's going on here? And we can't make any improvements till we know what the baselines are. We can't tell if we're improving or not if we don't know what the baselines are. So these citizen monitors have become very important in helping us know where we stand in Spartanburg County as far as our water quality goes. So a lot of times people go, well, it's just people that are doing this. They're not lab certified, whatever. How this works is they go out and do the baseline information. If something looks wonky, I got a weird number, my pH is 2, I don't know what's going on, they go and test again. They still come up with a pH of 2. This is a problem. They call their local coordinator, which through most of Spartanburg County is us at Watershed Ecology Center, and we come out and we'll test with you. And if we get 2, we go, okay, that is a problem. And we take it to Tim Sherbert, who is our county stormwater manager, and he has got a pretty big hammer. So he can find out, he has the resources, he can find out why that water has a pH of 2, and he can get it fixed. Whereas as a citizen, all I can do is whine and complain and really nothing happens. But because of the chain of command and because it's got the quality assurance program that's backed by the EPA and because Tim Sherbert is so awesome in Spartanburg, we can go and have that program that works where we can get it fixed. If it's a problem that Tim can't fix, he's hooked up with DHEC. He can go to them and they can get it fixed. They can make things happen. And so this is a citizen science program that's really working. It's making changes. Couple success stories. We found there's a guy named Ed Engasser who has gotten all of us into this. He kind of started this. He's a homeschool family, and his kids picked up Adopt a Stream as part of their science curriculum. And they were testing a stream, and everything was great. And then at one point, they were testing it on Saturdays. They had something else they were doing that Saturday. They couldn't make it, so they said, well, we'll go out on Monday and test it. So they went on Monday, and the bacteria levels were through the roof. They were like, what's going on here? So they went back on Tuesday. They tested again, through the roof. They said, this is crazy. So they went back on Saturday and tested again, normal. Okay. Sunday, normal. Monday, through the roof. They're going, I see a pattern here. So they got together with the stormwater coordinator and they came out and looked at it, and what had happened is there was an elementary school right there, and accidentally the drainage from the restrooms at the elementary school had been straight piped into a storm drain that then went directly into the stream. And it was not intentional, it was an accident, but they were able to fix that easily. They just stuck a pipe in that went to the right place, went to the water treatment instead of to the storm drain. And nobody would have ever known this had they always tested on Saturdays. But something came up and they found it got fixed. And so we've had that happen on a couple different occasions. We're not out to find the bad guys because most of this stuff is non-point source pollution. But occasionally we find a problem. Through working with partnerships, we can get them fixed without it being a big media heyday that doesn't fix anything, but we can actually get it fixed. Like the school didn't want it to be that problem. If we have a sewer line that breaks, the water district doesn't want that problem. They want to fix it. And so we found if we go to them and say, hey, we found this, they go on it and they get it fixed as soon as they can because it's in their best interest to do so. So Adopt a Stream is a great program. It can really help us learn about the baselines of the water quality. We're at the top of the watershed, so thankfully most of ours is good, but we got to take care of it. We are at the top. We do share it with the people at the bottom. And if anybody's interested in Adopt a Stream, we can hook you up with that. The trainings are free. We do still have some kits if you are in Spartanburg County. Are you the one that doesn't live in South Carolina? Was that you? Back here, okay, because somebody had said something about somebody not living in South Carolina and wanting to do it anyway. The South Carolina Adopt a Stream at this point is not set up to have sites that are not in South Carolina. So if you were monitoring in South Carolina but lived outside the state, that's fine. If you wanted to monitor outside South Carolina, we could train you in Georgia Adopt a Stream because we maintain a dual citizenship. We're trainers with both the South Carolina and the Georgia systems, and Georgia, they'll take anybody. They're fabulous, but the South Carolina is so new, they're just trying to get this database up and going, and they hope to incorporate that soon, but they're still just kind of trying to get it going. So if you are in a different state and want to monitor there, we can also get you trained to do that. It'd just be through Georgia. So that's the Pacolet from the mountains to the sea, a little bit about the water quality and the issues that are there, and Adopt a Stream, something we can do about it. Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
Who did the 2012?
DHEC. SC DHEC.
They only did very few then.
They did very few. What happened with DHEC was in 2000, they were doing a lot of streams. They would even have random sites that they would just go, I'm going to test here, and they would just go test there for a year and get a baseline on that. Then in 2009, the economy tanked, and DHEC lost most of their monitors, and so they had to make do with a couple of people that they had, which meant the testing suffered. And so they tested only a few streams, and just during that time, during the year from May to October, which is really when you're going to see water quality issues. The colder water has higher dissolved oxygen, which means some things go unnoticed. So they were hitting it at that peak time, but it was only every other month because they had to test somewhere else the other every other month and try to get all that in with very few people working for DHEC. So as citizens, we can kind of take up some of that slack and help out a little bit. DHEC is the Department of Health and Environment. And they do, it's kind of a crazy conglomeration because they do, like, if there's an outbreak of something at the schools, it's DHEC. If you're at a restaurant, it's DHEC that monitors the cleanliness of the kitchen. If you've got a problem in your stream, it's DHEC. And so they have a pretty broad scope that they have to work with. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, with the proposed drastic cuts to the Environmental Protection Agency, do you see, are you concerned with any cuts that will end up in this program?
It is possible. We have asked DHEC about that because we didn't know what was going to happen, because they had just decided they were going to start doing this program, and then all the cuts came in. And they have assured us that this is staying. But if there's more cuts, there's only so much they can do. They have said this is a priority, and they've really been working hard on it, but if anything else gets cut, it's hard to know what would happen.
Your Watershed Ecology Center?
Yes.
That is totally funded by grants?
It was in the past. Now we have 2 employees that are funded by the university, but we're funded by grants, and then through, I guess they're grants with like Spartanburg Water and SJWD Water District. They give us money and we provide the educational component. There's something called an MS4, which is the Municipal Sanitary Sewer System something. It's got all these S's in it. But basically it's guidelines that people that dump stuff back into the environment have got to follow. And one of those guidelines is an educational component for the community. And they're so busy just trying to keep the water clean and doing what they do that a lot of times they don't have time to do that educational component of those regulations. And so they kind of outsource it to people like the Watershed Ecology Center, and we go and do water education in their place. Does that make sense? So that's where we get a lot of our funding from. Yes?
You mentioned right at the start the North Pacolet. I live on the North Pacolet, and you said you had 3 items there that were already evidently subpar. Who did that study?
DHEC. That was from the, we could try to find your little stream if you want to. Let's see if I can get out of here. Is it still here? Go back up. Back up. Back up. Okay, you're on the North Pacolet. Where are you in the North Pacolet? Can you tell by look further to the left?
Yeah. There's Tryon. Keep going. Pacolet goes there. You can see Pacolet on 176, just outside the black.
Keep going. Whoa, it went small on me.
There you go. There's the North.
So like right, and then these reds are the ones that they have monitored. And if I click on this, I'm going to bring that over to where you are. This is the coolest thing. I'm computer illiterate and I can do this. So you can click on here and it'll tell you that it's polluted. And some of these I love. Okay, this is one of these. It tells you it's polluted, but it doesn't tell you why. And I love those. So you can click on the technical report, and basically all this does is tell you that it's polluted. And I'm going, fabulous, okay. But some of them do actually tell you the causes of impairment, and then, let's see if it'll tell us anything. Mercury in fish tissue. So this one's gonna tell us what's there. They've got mercury there, and there's probably a fish advisory for how many you're allowed to eat. Some of them actually will tell you this right up front. How do I get out of here now? Oh, I lost it. I closed the whole thing out. But if you go on that mapping tool I don't know how to get back there, but if you go on that mapping tool, you can actually zoom in and a lot of times find your stream. If it's blue, you know that it has not been assessed. We don't know anything about it. If it's red, you can usually click on it and it'll tell you, and my favorite part about it is it'll say technical report is one button, and then next to that is a plain English button that you can read, and it'll say, this is the impairment, this is what we call it, and this is what it means for you. And I think that's pretty cool because you don't have to wade through that technical report that's what they turn into the EPA. It's actually a little people-friendly version that tells you what's going on. Like that one said mercury buildup in fish tissue. Okay, I can understand that. But if you look at the technical report, it'll go through studies and how many and what kinds and where and all that kind of stuff. So if you go to that, oh, she's found it there. She's good. So you can click on these things and it'll tell you what's there and the extent.
Mercury come from?
I believe they had said it was from a mill or a plant that was in the area.
They checked the mills, the plants, the dentist was their main concern.
There we
They
go.
checked all the dental labs, because mercury is used in the fillings and all that. They never found a
Source.
smoking gun.
And that's kind of what I was
Possible. They had a lot of people do things.
I was thinking we got to be able to find out what this is, where it's coming from, and there was no, hey, it was this, but and then after that it's gone.
Yep.
But mercury does sink. It does tend to stay where it's at. It is a heavier metal, and so it stays there. The fish consume it through the plants and the smaller invertebrates that they're eating, and it just builds up in their system and stays there. So if there is mercury around, it will turn up in the fish tissue, and so that's where they
So
find
if
it.
they find it in an area, do they then go north of that area to see what other source it might be coming from if they don't find it?
Typically they do. With this, it seems as though it was a historic dumping of mercury and not something that's ongoing, and they were unable to find, I'm glad you found the same thing I did, they were unable to find a specific source for it. But today, if you decided to adopt a stream and you find an issue, that's exactly what we do is work upstream. So we find Tim, and Tim will actually walk the stream. Usually what he does is he drives and finds where he can find a bridge, and he'll test. And if he doesn't find it there, he goes back downstream and will walk up until he can find where this contamination is coming from. And so that's exactly how we typically find stuff.
Why does the mercury move beyond that?
It's a heavy metal. It sinks to the bottom, so it will be on the substrate, the floor of the stream. But then if there's a lot of construction, or if they do a beautification project where they dredge the stream, then they end up with spikes again because it'll disturb that settling. Yeah.
It'd be a hard one to clean up.
It is a very hard one to clean up because even the act of cleaning it up can dislodge it. And so it is very hard to clean up, and generally they recommend to just leave it so that it is not washed further downstream. They hope, yes, but it's still affecting the fish in that area. So this is just kind of a fun thing to play with. You can see what's there. Go ahead.
Actually, I have two questions.
Okay.
One is about the well water
Mhm.
areas that you've spoken about, and how they're affected, or is the water somehow filtered from the surface through rocks or
Mhm.
whatever to the point where it gets to?
Yes and yes. The well water, everybody that has a well is supposed to have their well water tested. If they come up with mercury levels in the wells today, if they find any mercury, it's a big issue. They do have a certain amount that's acceptable, but to most people, they're not willing to work with that. So if they find mercury in their well at all, usually they just don't use it. But there's a big difference between the groundwater, which is where that well water would be coming from, and the surface waters, which is what's running through the stream that has the mercury in it. And that groundwater is a cleaner source and a different source than the surface waters. However, there are places where they can come together.
And where's the best place to have that tested? I'm new in the area.
Okay. There's a lot of places that test it. We used to, but I'm not sure where exactly they test well water. Jack used to do well water testing all the time. But basically what they test for now is the bacteria. If you had concerns about the mercury or any other heavy metals, I know there's labs around that do that. Does anybody know where you would get that done?
You just check with the Department of Health.
Hell, yeah. Go to DHEC, they'll tell you. Department of Health.
Listed labs.
Another place you could check would be like the stormwater website may have something like that on it. But yeah, it's always good to know what's in your water if you're drinking from a well. Okay.
To protect the water,
Okay, the 319 grants?
yeah, from the cattle.
Okay. There's a whole, if you go onto the county stormwater, it's through county government. So if you go to Spartanburg County Government, I think it's just spartanburgcountygovernment.gov or something like that. But if you Google Spartanburg County Government and then just click on the stormwater, their logo is like a little water drop going into a puddle. And there's information on there on 319 grants. You can call the number there and just talk to Tim and tell him you talked to Beth and I said to call him, and then I'll get in trouble later. But he's the man to do it, and he's the one that can make it happen. He knows what all is available at what times and from who, and which areas can be protected at what times. He just wrapped up a big one on the Enoree, where they were doing a lot of keeping cattle out of the Enoree. So he would be the one to talk to about getting grant funding for that.
Now, I live in North Carolina, but I'd be willing to do some stream monitoring in Spartanburg County. Do you have lists of streams that you say, boy, we'd like this to be done?
Any of the ones that are blue? We do have some that we would like to see people monitor, but usually people pick one that's relatively close to them or easy for them to access, one that's by their work, when they go past, when they hike past, jog past, kayak in. And so normally it's one that means something to them, but basically there's a lot of blue out there that we have no knowledge of. And most of our volunteers are on the Pacolet after Bowen and Blaylock, like that section down there. I don't know that we have anybody. We're doing one spot on the South Pacolet. It's on the Holston, right before it kind of joins into, let's see if I can get down there.
So is it your grant and the Adopt a Stream, is that just in Spartanburg County, or will it do anywhere in South County?
Our grant was just for Spartanburg County.
So if you, like, were going to get one of the kits, then you'd need to limit yourself to Spartanburg County.
Right, but DHEC is working on, they are buying 10 kits from us, and with the idea that people that are trainers can kind of get those 10 kits to people who could use them. And so they're working on, because it's a brand new program, they're working on building up their supplies, and right now it's a big issue cutting through all the red tape to get it funded and all that crazy stuff. So, but anyway, this is Holston Creek. It's listed as being impaired, and there's a golf course nearby, and they were hoping to find that the golf course may be contributing to this pollution through fertilizers. And according to this, degraded aquatic life, it could easily be fertilizers, but what we found is that it's more sedimentation from new homes that are being put up. And so they can look at the map, go, yeah, it's red, but where's it coming from? And so we were kind of helping to flesh that out a little bit and see what's there. So you can, if you can find your stream on there, give you a little background information, but just bear in mind it's from 2012 and things do change. So, yes?
It'd be interesting to see the area near the dump,
Mm-hmm.
to see, because we know that filters down through the soil.
Mm-hmm.
And I got involved in that in another project a couple states away. But it definitely does, so it'd be interesting to test the water nearby.
Yes, and the old dumps, they are having problems with leaching from the old dumps into the waterways, and there are actually some that they have gone in and put in barriers, but the ways that the new landfills are made is totally different, but that doesn't mean that there can't be breakdowns in those systems. Mm-hmm.
If somebody's interested in adopting a stream in Spartanburg County, they can contact you.
Yep. That would be great, because Spartanburg County is pretty much us, because there's people in Anderson and people in Greenville and people in Columbia, and we're pretty much it for Spartanburg County.
You want to give us right now how we can contact you?
Sure. I'll just give you my email. It's relatively easy. My first name is Beth, so my email starts with a B, and then my last name is Button, like a button on your shirt. So you're kind of stuttering. It's B Button. So it's a B Button at USC Upstate.edu. That's the easiest way to get in touch with me. And we'd love to have any of y'all. We're getting geared up to do the trainings with Adopt a Stream. Erica in Greenville is offering a course in October, and so we may be offering one in November. We try to not have them all at the same time. The trainings, it's two Saturdays usually. The first Saturday we go over the chemical and bacteria monitoring and go over how to test for dissolved oxygen, how to test for pH, what these things mean. And then we do the bacteria monitoring. We go out and collect the water. You use a little pipette. We plate onto little films. We don't use our auger dishes anymore. We use these little films that actually have stuff in the auger that helps to separate out the E. coli from the other coliforms. Just they have a blue stain to them because of a certain protein that they have. So it's a lot easier to determine how many are there. So we go through that. We learn how to count them. And then the next Saturday we do the macroinvertebrate sampling, which to me is a lot more fun. We go and look for the critters that are in the stream, and they tell us more about the water quality because they live there. And so it's a fun course. There's classroom component and field component. We do spend a lot of time in the streams, and it's a lot of fun.
Do you do any kind of publicity or outreach to try and bring people into those?
To those workshops, yes, we do. I'd love to. I have your email. I would love to. Right now it's a little slow because of South Carolina Adopt a Stream just kind of getting up and running. We had a couple of workshops scheduled, and they really wanted us to do them South Carolina Adopt a Stream, but they weren't really ready, so we kind of scrambled and got stuff put together. But by now, they're saying that by October they're going to be ready. And so we're hoping to be able to do that. But if you are somebody who's not in the state and wants to monitor out of the state, we can also do the Georgia Adopt a Stream and get you certified through them so that your information can be put up on a database. And all this information that you're collecting is on a database that's easy to get to and can be viewed by anybody. So you can go on the Georgia Adopt a Stream website, click on any of the little bubbles. A lot of them are in South Carolina, and you can get in graph form all the information that has been collected at that site. And South Carolina is working toward having that on their website as well. So easy to get to. Anybody can see it. It's not a secret thing. And to me, that's key for people in the community to be able to see what the water quality is like. Great. Anybody else? Go ahead.
When the stream monitor collects the sample, do they actually test it?
Yes, they do.
Then they send the data to you.
They put the data right onto the database, either at their house or at their library, or if you don't have a computer. The South Carolina one you can do on a smartphone. I have a smartphone. It was my daughter's. She gave it to me when she got a new one. And
It's only as smart as it's used.
yeah, for me to get on that website and enter anything would be like a minor miracle. So I just go back to the lab and do it, or back to my house and do it on my laptop at home. But the South Carolina one is supposed to be very mobile friendly, but you enter that data yourself. It's got a quality assurance, quality control program, so all the volunteers are monitoring the same way. They all are using the same pH test kits. They're all using the same dissolved oxygen system with the same kits. And so all of the data is comparable. And that's why this program works so well, because everybody's doing the same things and following the same protocols. Good question. But yes, you can do it right in your own house. My daughter is going into 9th grade. Well, she's in 9th grade now. She has been monitoring the spring in Boiling Springs. since last year, and she gets all of her stuff out and just does her testing there on the kitchen table, and then we spray it down with bleach and eat dinner. So you can do all of it right there in your house. It comes with a little incubator to grow your little bacteria dudes, and so you get your own little chicken incubator, which, by the way, does work on chickens. Not that I've tried, but we decided we were going to name them like E. and coli and stuff like that, but we didn't. But yeah, they do hatch chickens very well. But all of that can go right in your house. It doesn't take up very much space. It comes in a little tub, and then the box for the incubator, it sits right on there, and you get a D-net to test for macros, and it's all right in your house. Yes?
Do you have any information, results of the Bowling Spring water?
I could probably pull up some of them. The South Carolina site isn't up so well yet, but the Georgia one, I think she's got some of those. Let me see if I can remember what it is. Georgia, let me just Google it because they changed it. I can't type either, can you tell? Georgia Adopt a Stream, look at that. Oh, where'd it go? Came right up. Georgia Adopt a Stream. This is the old one, but I think it'll take us there. Okay, so when this comes up, there was a map. Let's see if it's still coming. Hello? Okay, here we go. All active sites. And this is what eventually the South Carolina one is going to look like. But as you can see, there's a lot of sites that have moved over from Georgia into South Carolina. A lot of these Spartanburg ones are ours, and then the Columbia ones are with the folks we've worked with down there. Big Shoaly, Boiling Springs. Her name is Carolina, so she's got Carolina Blue. And she only had 4 monitoring vents before she switched over to South Carolina. I clicked. Are you going anywhere?
Yeah, it's working.
It is doing something. Oh, I see it. Waiting for Georgia Adopt a Stream. But it'll come up with graphs, and it shows, because of the way that the stream is, we can't monitor invertebrates in the stream because it's through a pipeline into a little culvert thing. Okay, I'm scared it's not doing anything. Let's try this one. It's not going to give me either of them. It's spinning and spinning. But it shows you the location. And then these people that are on here are the local coordinators. So for the state of South Carolina, there are not very many of us that are trained as trainers. And so Jack Turner is my boss. So Jack and I are trained, and Erica is from Upstate Forever. And because we are in the general area where she is monitoring, if she were to have a problem, she knows who to contact because those are her local coordinators. She could just click on these people, and an email address will come up, and she can say, hey, my pH is 2. What do I do? However, she lives with one of them, so she doesn't have to worry about doing that. And she always has my boss's ear, so she thinks Dr. Turner walks on water. So that's always fun, too. So this is her events here, and so we've got the time she spent sampling. It takes her about 30 minutes, and this is pretty typical. So we drive to the spring, which is not very far away, and it takes her about 30 minutes to do her monitoring, and then we go home and she plates her E. coli and she's done. So air temperature, you can see she did, somehow we got a couple, looks like the same ones. Yeah, that's the same data. So we have actually 2 before she moved into South Carolina. But the air temperature is important because we need that to know if it's cold out and the water's warm, maybe something odd's going on. So the air temperature and the water temperature do have a correlation. So she checks the air temperature, she checks the water temperature. pH here is low. She's got 5.37 and 5.625, and she actually turned this into Tim. One day we were doing something, and she said, hey Tim, why is my pH so low? And he said, it's what? And she told him, and he said, I don't know. And so he had people from his monitoring, where the lab that he sends his work to, come up and check the stream just to see what was going on. And they said that this is typical of stream water because of acid rain, and it's not being diluted or passed through anything else on the way down. And so they said this is a typical range for spring water. So as a kid at this point in 8th grade, she was oh so excited to have her stuff tested by the labs in Columbia, you know, and have them agree with her. Then she also checks the conductivity, which is the rate at which electricity can be passed through the water. This tells us about particles in the water. And hers typically stays around this level, which is very low. It's basically a spring that's going through concrete, so it's not picking up a lot of stuff. This is a baseline information. Your stream can be anything. And as long as it stays what it normally is, you know everything's going fine. If you have a rapid change, okay, there's something weird going on. And around here with our muddy streams, a lot of times you have higher conductivity. If your stream is going over like bedrock, you're going to have a lower conductivity. Dissolved oxygen, these are not high numbers. These are pretty low numbers. Once you get below 4, things start dying off. But this is not a stream, and this is not in a natural setting. It's a spring that's piped into a little cauldron type thing so people can look at it, and then it goes down into a drain to somewhere else. So we don't expect the dissolved oxygen to be very high. And I think that's everything that oh, and E. coli. She has never had any E. coli, which bums her out because that's her favorite part. But at the same time, she's excited to not have E. coli. There are coliforms in there, but they are not the E. coli that we're looking for to be specific indicators of issues with the water. So I think there's little graphs too. If I go over there. Whoa, I did something. I'm still doing something wrong. Oh, go away. Nope, I guess the graphs, so you got it. Okay, secondary access. So you can get the little graphs if you click on the things, they show up. They changed their website recently too. And so, let's see, she's only got these couple events. How do I get it to do dissolve? Here we go. So we could do dissolved oxygen. And it'll show us a little graph of what her dissolved oxygen was. And it's very user-friendly. Anybody can look at these. On the Georgia one, the South Carolina one, like I said, is still working on this. Some of them don't come up or whatever. But this is their eventual goal. So you can see all this information right there. And it's very easy to hand over to somebody. If we go to Tim, we can say, hey, this is what they're finding. You can find all their baseline information right here. And he can just go right to the site, click on it, and go, whoa, that was a huge change. I wonder what happened there. And so it's all there. It's backed by the EPA, and that makes it a little bit more reliable. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.